It's finally getting hot outside. I want to talk about my top 10 summer fragrances on the higher end of things. Niche fragrances are for the people that have expensive taste, or they're just a slave to very pricey brands. Over the years, I've collected a lot of fragrances, both designer and niche. And if you're not sure, niche fragrances are made by companies that really focus on fragrances. They tend to be more expensive, they tend to be more exclusive. They also generally have more unusual scents. They're composed differently than mass market fragrances. I chose 10 from my collection that I want to share with you in order from 10 to 1. These are the 10 summer fragrances on the higher end of things that I'm really looking forward to wearing this summer. Right out the gate, we're gonna start with a non-niche fragrance, Tom Ford Mandarino di Amalfi Acqua. Although Tom Ford makes things other than fragrances, the private blend is kind of their niche line. It's a lot more expensive, a lot more higher end. Mandarino di Amalfi, representing the Amalfi cliffsides, is the EDT version of the original. It's part of the bluish greenish line of fresh fragrances in the private blend, not unlike Costa Azzurra and Neroli Portofino. But Mandarino di Amalfi is pretty cool. It's a true unisex fragrance that is citrus, aromatic, minty and herbal, floral as well. It has a wonderful natural balance of notes that makes it enjoyable to wear. The price is also pretty darn good. But the price is good because there's more water in it. It's the EDT rather than the original EDP, and the performance is pretty similar, but just a bit worse than an already bad performing fragrance. This is one that you'll have to apply heavily, which you can't really overspray it, but just keep in mind, if you need something that'll last all day, this is not one for you. Next up we have Virgin Island Water by Creed. Extremely tropical, very, very evocative of the summertime. Virgin Island Water has a lot of similarities to the Tom Ford I just talked about. Not when it comes to scent at all, but its characteristics are very similar. It's a pretty unisex fragrance, but also the performance isn't incredible either, at least on me. Mandarino di Amalfi just performs bad on everyone. Virgin Island Water, however, performs differently on certain people. I get abysmal performance with it, but I've heard a lot of other people that have had great experiences wearing Virgin Island Water. And even though it doesn't last all day on my skin, the scent is beautiful enough to justify wearing it. It's a fragrance that I could easily take on vacation and just apply it every 4 to 5 hours and just have the best time. Next up we have one of my personal favorites, Layton by Parfums de Marly. Layton is definitely one of the most versatile niche fragrances in my collection. It's composed like a designer fragrance, but it has the quality of a high-end niche fragrance. And by looking at the notes, you wouldn't necessarily interpret this as a summer fragrance per se, and that's because it isn't. But it can be worn in the summer, and I do it all the time. It's so likable that even if it does get a bit too hot and it becomes a bit too sweet, people are still going to enjoy it off of you. I would argue you would enjoy it off yourself. And because it's a really, really solid performer, you can tweak it and customize how much you put on. I would much rather have a strong fragrance that I would apply maybe 1 or 2 sprays of versus a weak fragrance that I have to do 6 or 7 sprays of for the same result. And wearing sweeter fragrances in the summer is nothing new, because if you think of the amount of people that wear Le Male year-round, that wear Versace Eros year-round, they exist. And when applied correctly, they can technically work too. They're not ideal, they're not tailor-made for the warm weather, but they can kind of work. Layton is in that category as well, but it just does things a little bit better because it's a higher quality fragrance overall. If you want to get really detailed, I would recommend Layton for slightly cooler summer days. Summer nights would be perfect as well, but it's still one that I will definitely wear this summer quite a bit. Next up is from Acqua di Parma, and if you know me, you may have guessed it, but you actually totally didn't, because it's Colonia Quercia. 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 When Quercia dropped, the internet went crazy for all the wrong reasons. They said, my God, Acqua di Parma released their version of Sauvage. It is so easy to trivialize fragrances as being an attempt at being Sauvage, but it couldn't be further from the truth in this case. Yes, Quercia at its core is kind of a spicy citrus fragrance, which Sauvage is also kind of. But Acqua di Parma has a certain way of putting together fragrances. The blend is wonderful, everything fits so well. From the geranium to the cardamom and the cedar at the base. It was a really cool release. And I love that they included it in the brown ingredient line, where you would think that all the notes in those fragrances wouldn't suit the Mediterranean coastline, but they do. And Quercia is no exception. It is a signature scent worthy fragrance that people just ignore because of the backlash it got as soon as it was released. People just ignored it. And although you can wear this year round, in the summer, it is a really cool, creative fragrance that will allow you to stand out. Perhaps a little bit more on the mature side, not as bubblegummy sweet as a designer fragrance, but as long as the temperature doesn't get too crazy high, this one works really, really nicely. Just missing the top 5 is everybody's holy grail favorite summer fragrance, Xerjoff Neo. Neo is basically the king of bergamot fragrances, or shall I say, the queen. Whenever I wear Neo, it blows my mind, but it also kind of makes me feel a little bit dainty because of the floral quality of it. It's a unisex fragrance. Even though it's citrus heavy, which a lot of masculine perfumery is, the floral quality balances it and slightly pulls it into a feminine direction. If you're a niche head that's into all these crazy expensive fragrances, you probably wear a lot of different styles of fragrance. So the slightly feminine edge of Neo won't really bother you. Neo's incredible, it really is. It gets a lot of positive praise for a reason. But I will not recommend you blind buy it, because even though it's most people's pinnacle, not everybody's. It's not necessarily going to be for you. And at that price point, why take the chance? Get a sample of it first and try it out, and also see how it performs on you. I get pretty great performance with it, 6 to 8 hours, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody because it's so heavy with the use of bergamot, which is a very delicate baby note. Just before we go on, I want to say thank you for watching. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing that. And like the video because it really helps me. YouTube likes, and I like likes more, so. We're now in top 5 territory. Next up we have Maison Francis Kurkdjian Aqua Vitae Forte. Aqua Vitae Forte was the one fresh MFK fragrance that I was compelled to purchase for several reasons. One of which being, it's a Forte version. It's more concentrated and it performs very, very well. And also when it comes to niche fragrances, I buy them because they're creative. They're different. They're not just citrus. And this fragrance really captured me because it's citrus, but it's also spicy, and it utilizes the note of ylang ylang. Probably my second favorite fresh floral note. It pairs beautifully with citrus, and it doesn't really feel all that feminine, but not masculine either. It's right in the middle, and if you like those kinds of notes, it's probably the perfect fragrance for you. I just seem to gravitate towards Francis Kurkdjian and his ability to make really compelling, fresh floral fragrances for men. And that was also exemplified in my designer list, which is the cards up top, when I talked about Dior Homme Cologne, the original version. Made by the same guy, but instead of ylang ylang, you have fresh floral iris. It gives it a certain level of class and sophistication that you won't find at a drugstore. Number 4, Reflection Man. Yes. We all know Reflection Man by Amouage is a banger. It's definitely the most popular fragrance by Amouage, and being a woody floral musk fragrance, doesn't scream summer, but it is. It is a very summer-friendly fragrance. It smells so good that it's very hard for people around you to dislike. And for those of you who don't know, floral fragrances tend to lean to the fresh side of things. I did a video on the 8 olfactive families where I went into detail on each main classification of fragrance. Oftentimes when I think of florals, I immediately go to rose, which is a bit of a heavier floral note, but more often than not, a floral fragrance will be appropriate for the summer. Reflection Man is great. It uses sandalwood, it's musky, and I do think its use of musk really smooths it out really nicely. It is a bit on the powdery side. It has a bit of a baby powder type of feel to it as well, but don't let that deter you. You won't feel like a baby wearing it. You'll feel like a real nice, cool man. And it gets its rave reviews for a very good reason. It's a phenomenal fragrance, performs very well considering how kind of transparent it feels. If you don't have it or haven't even tried it, you definitely need to get a sample of it, maybe even blind buy, because everyone likes Reflection Man. Number 3 on my list is Toukka Ta Tao. If you read the storyline of it, there is some Thai mythology applied to it with turtles and Turtle Island. And what it does is it effectively communicates tropical Thailand in olfactive form. The use of passion fruit, mango, coconut, ylang ylang, once again. The harmony of all these notes is really a thing of beauty. And it just takes me back to the times that I went to Thailand and experienced the beautiful culture there. But it is incredibly different, beautiful, likable, unisex. It's just very expensive and a bit hard to find. And it sometimes gets discontinued and then gets reintroduced. And I'm lucky to have it, but just take a look at the notes. And if it seems like something you'd be into, you'll probably be into it. It's a wonderfully made fragrance. Nothing remotely smells like a chemical. It's just fantastic. At number 2, a bit of a surprise, jroyl Renaissance. Renaissance was my king of all summer fragrances for a long time, and it still is in the royal court. Okay, I love it. It's my number 2. That's prestigious. It's a fresh citrus mint fragrance that I absolutely love. Renaissance is part of the 1861 line, which also has my favorite fragrance in Naxos. And what I like about it is it's a fraghead's fragrance. It's one that even the most snobby fragrance enthusiast will enjoy. Nowadays, citrus and aquatic and minty fragrances, it's a dime a dozen. There's so many out there with a wide variety of performance levels and complexity. Renaissance is kind of at the peak because it performs very well on my skin and it gets really big compliments, not just from everyday people, but from other fragrance reviewers. I put this on and they just stop dead in their tracks and they're like, you smell really good, dude. No homo. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all. Seriously. This year, however, I don't see myself wearing it as much as I'm going to wear my number 1 fragrance. And that's because the number 1 fragrance on this list is extremely versatile. It can be worn year-round, anyone really, in my opinion, in this guy's opinion. It is a fragrance that I classify as a citrus aromatic. It's mature and sophisticated, but likable enough that a more youthful person can wear it too. It smells similar to a fragrance by the House of Creed, which is another fragrance that was copied by a lot of smaller fragrance houses. With notes like lemon, lavender, rose, sandalwood, and my favorite, fresh floral iris. My number 1 niche fragrance for the summer happens to be Leslie's favorite jroyl Mefisto, an elevated version of Silver Mountain Water. I'm gonna be wearing it a lot because I'll be surrounded by Leslie a lot. If you wanna check out a cool battle video I did with Timmy and Manny about Neo and Renaissance, you can click that right here. This is just my opinion after all, so don't get too upset. Get your own, okay?